Hi, my name's Bruce. This is my channel. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to do a brief report on the state of Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is a province in Canada. It's not the easternmost province, but it's almost the easternmost province. It's the easternmost maritime province, which is the second easternmost Atlantic province. And there's an election underway. And presently, the Premier of the province of Nova Scotia, who I guess would technically be called the incumbent, or the person that wishes to gain re-election, well, that person is, his name's Tim Houston. And now, if you've been watching my channel, oh, by the way, if you could subscribe, that'd be great. I really like it when people subscribe. It's kind of, I like it. I'm allowed to like it. You know, it's innocuous, and I like it. But anyway, Premier Tim Houston. If you've been following along, you'll know that Canada has a constitution. If you're in the United States or if you're in another country, you also have a constitution, and the constitution is similar, but it's not the same. The Canadian constitution marks out what the rights and responsibilities are in the areas of specific concern between the provinces and the federal government. And the provinces, their area of specific concern the areas are energy, transportation, healthcare, education, and mineral resources. That's their wheelhouse. So when someone says stay in your lane, and in the provincial federal sense, that in Canada, that's what they're talking about. You provincial guys, you look after that, and us federal guys, we're going to look after other things, and there's some overlap and intersection, but that's a topic of another day. So, but we're talking about Nova Scotia. All right, now how is Nova Scotia doing in these metrics? Okay, how is Nova Scotia doing in terms of healthcare? Well, I have some experience with Nova Scotia healthcare. My family has some experience with Nova Scotia healthcare, and I'm going to say that Nova Scotia is not doing well with respect to healthcare. Now, the Premier has done, and I previously said I thought this was an excellent move. The Premier has kind of, and you can do this if you're the Premier, you have a tremendous amount of power. He has said we're going to have an additional medical school, and we're going to graduate X number of additional doctors on an annual basis, and those doctors will practice in the province of Nova Scotia, and that would be good. However, it is good. Okay? Objectively, that's good. But it's also short-sighted. Healthcare requires a lot of stuff. Healthcare requires transportation. Healthcare requires people wanting to live in the province. Healthcare requires janitorial service, custodial services, maintenance services, nurses, nurse practitioners, licensed practical nurses, various medical specialties of surgeons and such. Healthcare requires electricians. Healthcare requires energy. Healthcare requires a lot of things, and these are the pillars and foundation upon which healthcare is built. Now, I'm lucky enough, I had dinner one time with Mr. Stanley, Tommy Douglas. Stanley Knowles and my Tommy Douglas is confused for a second. That happens. You get up there. But anyway, Tommy Douglas. And gosh, he was a captivating guy, and I was very young at the time. I had no clue who he was. But he's the father of the Canadian medical system that we now really, really enjoy. And Nova Scotia has the same system. And the thing about healthcare is it's like anything. You go to the restaurant on Tuesday and the meal's fantastic. You go Wednesday and for some reason it's not quite as fantastic as it was on Tuesday. So things have their ups and downs, and it's important to recognize that. And it's important to recognize that it's a body of professionals that are making this thing work, and they need unwavering and unequivocal support. So that's kind of like the Premier's job, unwavering and unequivocal support. And a little bit of criticism now and again, because without pressure, things tend not to amend or change. So healthcare, what's the score I'm going to give to the province of Nova Scotia in healthcare? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give them a 6. I get a 6. Healthcare. Energy. Nova Scotia is responsible the provincial government is responsible for energy. How's Nova Scotia doing? Failing badly. It's a catastrophe. A number of years ago, someone came up with the great idea of giving away or privatizing Nova Scotia Power. And so when we talk about energy in the modern context, really we're talking about electrical generation. That's incredibly important, and Nova Scotia is not doing well. There's a couple of people that have proposals brought forward to install wind turbine farms, and that wind turbines are great. Okay, they're wonderful. But the negative of them is that, first of all, people don't want to look at them. And in this context, there's a second weird negative, is that the proposals are to take the electrical energy that's generated from the wind turbine farms, convert that into hydrogen, ship the hydrogen to Europe, and then they can use that for a variety of purposes. Now, that's kind of bad for a couple of reasons. One that's not apparent is that hydrogen's great. I can talk about it at length, but any use of hydrogen in ground transportation really is a failure. It's not a good idea. And a side of discussing hydrogen is you're kind of legitimizing the petrochemical industry, because at this moment, like 99.9% of hydrogen that's used in industry or is used in transportation or is used wherever comes from petrochemical sources. It comes from methane. It comes from methane. That's it. And it has all of the negatives that are associated with the petrochemical industry, and then a couple of extra ones in addition. So use of hydrogen in ground transportation that's a really bad idea. It's not necessary. It's silly. So in Nova Scotia, they have a great opportunity. Offshore wind is great. It can seize on that. Onshore wind is great. They can seize on that. Solar is great. They can seize on that. Thankfully, there's no discussion about any kind of anything really silly like further petrochemical development. So that's good. So on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of energy, I had said that Nova Scotia was a firm fail. I'm going to give it a 4. Maybe 4 is better than a 0, but it's still a 4. It's not a 6. It's not an 8. And certainly it's not a 10. Here you go. Next one, mineral resources. How's Nova Scotia doing there? Not that great. Fine, but not that great. The big mineral resource in Nova Scotia, I think, is gypsum. And then a bunch of silly people are mining coal in Cape Breton, that's a firm mistake. You know, I think a rough estimate of the number of people who died mining coal in Cape Breton is like 25,000. That might be a little high, but it's a number like that. It's huge. Over the past 250 years, it's enormous. Mining coal, no. So in terms of developing mineral resources, Nova Scotia gets, I'm going to say, a 5, because they're not going forward, and they're kind of going backwards, but they're getting a 5. Okay. Education in Nova Scotia. You know, education is kind of an industry in Nova Scotia. In the city of Halifax, there's a ton of universities, and they are a driver of the economy. They have jobs, and people get educated, and they do stuff. The Halifax and the Nova Scotia high-tech sector exists. It's real. There's battery technology being developed at Dalhousie. It's wonderful. You can get a top-level education in Nova Scotia, but education is more than post-secondary education. Education also has to do with elementary schools and such. And how are they doing? Well, they could be doing a whole heck of a lot better, I'll tell you. Now, I'm going to give Nova Scotia in the area of education, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. And all this falls at the doorstep of the Premier of the province of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston. Okay, begins and ends with that guy. All right, so I've talked about mineral resources, education. Now we're going to talk about transportation. Talked about healthcare. Transportation. Right. Transportation is within the province is the domain of the province, right? It's the provincial Department of Highways. It's the Alberta Department of Highways. It's the BC Department of Highways. It's BC Ferries. It's kind of Marine Atlantic, which is kind of between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. But transportation is a provincial matter, and in the province of Nova Scotia, transportation is a hard F. It's a fail. Uh, I'll give you the number grade quickly right here. I'm going to say transportation is a 3. The main centers in Nova Scotia are industrial Cape Breton, Sydney, say, and Halifax. And to travel between those two places, your choices begin and end with the private automobile. There's some, because the demand is there due to the influx of foreign students and such, there's some small shuttle agencies, or some, basically they're private automobiles, a little bit glorified, but not really, traveling there. But you know, Nova Scotia lacks a definitive plan for transportation other than let's build roads, plow the roads, maintain the roads, all that stuff. You can do so much better. I mean, because Nova Scotia kind of has a spine, I mean, a defined direction, you can do, it's begging for something better, right? That better could be rail, really, rail. That'd be great. And then you think, well, air travel. Nova Scotia has Halifax and Sydney as the big airports. And for the longest time, you could not fly into Sydney. You could not fly from Halifax to Sydney. You could not fly from anywhere to Sydney. That is a fail. It's a failure on the part of the provincial government. Okay. So we've had education, healthcare, transportation, mineral resources, and energy. There you are. Now, all this is the bailiwick, strictly, of our Premier Tim Houston. And how's that doing? Not well. You might say, why? Why is that not doing well? Well, the guy looks good. I mean, he looks nice in a suit. I think he looks better than me, for sure. His resume, he was an accountant consultant in Bermuda for a long time, for a number of years. And then he thought maybe he got a little tired of the sun, and he moved to Nova Scotia. He thought he'd be premier. Now, can Nova Scotia be doing better? Absolutely. Can Tim Houston be doing better? Absolutely. The Nova Scotians are having an election, so when you're having your election, you want to think, the things that are in the bailiwick of the province, in the domain of Tim Houston, how's he doing? Ask yourself that question, and don't fall for the fallacy of blaming it on the federal government, the shortcomings, because the federal government does not have purview over the things that most directly impact the lives of the citizens of the province of Nova Scotia. Full stop. The federal government provides the financing, the money for health care, but they do not manage the health care. The federal government is eager to partner and be cooperative on projects of transportation and projects of education and projects of, oh, I forgot to mention one thing, education. They just built the Nova Scotia Community College, a new campus in Sydney, and the building looks great. That project's probably been on the go for 10 years before the time of Tim Houston. It's looking pretty good. Anyway, my name's Bruce. This is my channel. If you find this stuff at all useful or entertaining or funny or something, you like to have here occasionally, I'll admit it's a bit of a rant. That's fine. Please subscribe. I like subscribers. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, bye now.